Was it false marketing or narrative subversion? It's a conversation worth having, especially after so much time has elapsed since the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And with the next entry close on the horizon, we've had plenty of time to digest what the game did both gameplay-wise and story-wise. When they announced the remake for Final Fantasy VII, many of us expected the story to be expanded on shore, but for the main story beats of the game to be maintained, just with additional stuff surrounding it. What many of us weren't expecting was for the game to lure us in on that idea, and then to pull the rug out from under us and deliver a wholly different experience than what we were anticipating. Final Fantasy VII Remake was far more literal with its title and that specific word remake than we had anticipated. See, the game wasn't a retelling, it was a new story. At this moment, we don't know if it's a direct follow-up to the events of Final Fantasy VII, it's some kind of like time loop, or if this is a parallel universe, or whatever. All we know is that at the end of the game, Red 13 had visions of the very end of Final Fantasy VII and realized that those events cannot be allowed to transpire. But the game did not inform you of this being the actual identity of the game until you were hours into it. And the pre-marketing, at least from my recollection, did not hint towards this state either. So could this be considered a case of false advertising or false marketing or something along those lines? Well, I think there's a couple of contextual questions that need to be addressed before we can answer that. What was Square Enix's intention with the marketing? What was the effect of the said marketing? And what was the end result with the game? Three important questions because this whole debate will rely a lot on your own preference and perspective on not only the original Final Fantasy VII, but also the remake. We knew going in that the remake would be roughly 40 hours, centered solely on the Midgar portion of the original game. Many were concerned that taking a section that was far shorter in the original and blowing it up to a full-length Final Fantasy-length game would compromise the pacing. I think that was a natural concern to have, and that was a completely valid concern. The pacing of the original game was pivotal to the experience after all. How could this work without padding it out? Well, I think the game had some padding to be sure, but if you were telling a fundamentally new story, then expanding on the Midgar section while touching on those key points from the original can work, if the story itself is fundamentally different. Final Fantasy VII starts with a near one-for-one replication of the original game. You destroy the reactor, Shinra adds to the carnage, which was a cool twist, and you think, oh, okay, so there are some additions and some changes, okay, let's see how this goes. And then Cloud makes the jump, and reaches the rest of Avalanche instead of being on his own and regrouping with the rest on the train. Okay, another deviation, but what are we doing here? Oh, we are seeing more of the carnage, that now Shinra has wrought upon the city. We see various NPCs concerned as the city burns and rubble piles up as cars periodically explode. The damage was clearly extensive, and with the new art style and graphics, it's very effectively conveyed, and Jessie starts to be concerned that this was a result of her own actions. Okay, an interesting twist on those events we all knew. How will this be utilized? Is this how they're gonna expand the story? Biggs, Wedge, and Jessie seem to have more going for them as characters this go around. Okay, still overall pretty faithful story beat-wise, just now we are soaking up the consequences of our actions more. And then Cloud separates from everyone, and this is where the questions start to begin, and the doubt as to what we are really playing begins to take shape. Cloud has a vision of Sephiroth. We don't know that the vision is real or not, or if this is just a hallucination or a dream, or whatever, but Sephiroth was basically non-existent in the original Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII. He doesn't show up till pretty late in the game, at least for Midgar. This was not only an addition, it was a departure, and not in the way of the Tifa flashback from early in the game. That was just Cloud thinking of the past, a cool addition that brings Tifa into the story way earlier, but this was introducing the main antagonist far early into the overall experience. This was a departure, no matter how you sliced it. And as you continue the game, it seems pretty similar to the original with a few changes here and there, or some new sections. Cool, it adds to the world and adds to these characters. You don't go down into the Avalanche base in 7th Heaven in the remake, for instance. You do some side quests. Sector 7 has more personality and characters to it. Okay, this is cool. And then bit by bit, the game starts to pull the wool from over your eyes. And it does this through the Spectres. Every time a deviation from the original plot is about to be achieved story-wise, the Spectres come in and force the characters upon the path of the original game. For the longest time, these Spectres are just a mystery. We don't know who they are, what they want, or why they're even there. It's a weird addition. They force Jesse to be sidelined for the reactor mission, which ends up with Cloud going along like the base game. They hamper the Turks' progress for getting Cloud and Aerith in the church and forcing us to escape like in the original. And then the plate scene, where they prevent us from stopping the plate from falling. In the original, we were unable to prevent this. In the remake, we were absolutely in a position to stop this. But we are prevented from doing so by the Spectres. They are forcing the events of the original game to take place. Okay, what is going on with the Spectres? These are the thoughts that I at least had when I first played Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's clearly something deeper going on with them. And at the end of the game, they all get fused with a Yu-Gi-Oh! Style polymerization, form Voltron, and we defeat the concept of fate and destiny itself. Okay, now this is like a Final Fantasy game. And the game ends with us essentially being able to tell a new story, not being shackled by fate. At least, that's what it looks like. But what does this have to do with the false marketing claim by many? Well, the story's all about how we have to change the future to prevent the events of the original game from happening. The goal of the game is to make sure that the original doesn't happen. We are telling a new story. You could even say that we are remaking Final Fantasy VII. Get it, name drop. The name of the game was recontextualized for us. We go into it expecting a retelling of the original game with some additions to it, and we walk away from it in a completely different story, where the objective is to make sure that the original doesn't come to pass. This is a fundamentally different game than a remaster or traditional remake of a game. And honestly, for me, it was a really cool gaming moment. I like it when a game is able to surprise me and tell a compelling narrative like the remake did. However, if you went into it expecting and wanting the original game, you could feel betrayed or lied to, and honestly, I understand that sentiment. And they could have clued us into this new direction before the game was released, but here's the tricky part. If you're a Final Fantasy VII purist and you want the original story, yeah, that information would have helped you avoid the game. But it would have also compromised the experience for those of us who actually wanted, or at least ended up liking this new direction. Because if we knew this was definitely a new story, it would have compromised the overall reveal of it. Because we were learning this was a new story, as the characters were as well. We went into it expecting Final Fantasy VII and left like the characters, realizing we have to create a new story here. And I value experiences like that. And you could call it false marketing if you wish, in fact, but Stephanie Sterling has a great video on this topic, and I'll leave it in the description down below if you want to give it a watch. But the underlying point is that really the difference between false marketing and narrative subversion is really just if you liked it or not. And I love the remake, so I would lean towards narrative subversion. It's one of those gaming moments that will live with me for a long time, that I won't forget, because I treasure the experience that the game gave me. However, if you wanted Final Fantasy VII, I can completely understand why you would be disappointed with this, because this isn't what you wanted, or what you signed up for. And in an era where pre-release marketing and trailers have a tendency of giving up way too much information, potentially undermining or compromising the storytelling experience through spoilers, I don't mind being bamboozled like the remake did. But if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. And I personally think that the remake did do it right. It had heart, it had soul, it had character, and the overall style of the game really resonated with me. It's in the vein of Metal Gear Solid 2, where the fact you were playing as Raiden hidden and advertised the initial section with Snake. So when you did play as Raiden, it was a big surprise. Or when Nier Automata swapped out characters in various trailers to keep massive surprises and story events under wraps, so you could experience them naturally in the story and be surprised. I value those kinds of narrative subversions, so long as you lead to more interesting and engaging experiences as a result of them, which I think all three titles managed to achieve. But I understand where people are coming from when they say they feel misled or lied to. It's not a matter of being right or wrong here, and this is the underlying point here. It's a matter of perspective, and I think just shouting to each other that someone is wrong for feeling the way they do is just not beneficial to the overall discussion. Personally, I hope we, at some point, at least get a proper remaster or a more traditional remake of the original Final Fantasy VII, because regardless of where this remake series goes, I still treasure the original experience and want to see that experience again, but with an art style that hasn't aged like regurgitated milk. I think there's room for both of these types of stories. And I know we're supposed to get a mobile game that's supposed to retell the events of Final Fantasy VII in the Compendium, and I want to see how that goes. But I would still be in favor of seeing a traditional remaster or a more traditional story-wise remake of Final Fantasy VII. I think there's room for both. So I'm going to call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure checking the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe out there, everybody. Have a great day. If you like the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified for when I upload in the future. And leave a comment down below with whether or not you are excited to see where the remake story goes from here, or if you would prefer a traditional remake of Final Fantasy VII. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.